Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I've got Mathieu Bablet's Adrastea from Magnetic Press. Anytime I get a book from Magnetic Press, I'm pretty excited. They've always got excellent production quality, always nice, large, hardcover books with really good printing. And then they've always got these rounded corners, which I really like for some reason. I don't know. I think they just feel like less likely to get banged up. Plus, it looks kind of cool and futuristic to me. Um, Mathieu Bablet is an artist that I've got a couple other books by, and they're all like science fiction books. This one's cool because it's more like a fantasy book. But one thing you can always count on with Bablet's artwork is this like super intensely detailed rendering of backgrounds and like sense of place and space and just like really imaginative work. And then always like really interesting color schemes. I'll show some of the color as I go through this book, but this is an artist. There's a couple that I haven't got by this artist yet, but the ones that I do have, I really enjoy. Always a really thoughtful writer as well, which is the case in this book. On this book, I particularly like the design of the end papers. Is designed to look like an old 8-bit three-quarter view RPG game, and as a fan of like the old Zeldas and stuff, like this is really cool to see, and it's a map of the character's journey in the book as well, and the different gods and monsters that the main character encounters over time in the book. So I thought that was really cool and really well done and well designed. The book is kind of just a simple quest for meaning, which I guess is never so simple, but it starts out with the story about a child, a prince, who every time he eats spits up these rocks, and at some point he gets tired of spitting up the rocks and quits eating altogether, and he's collected his rocks that he spits up, and now finds out that even though he's not eating anymore, he doesn't die, and thus began the story of the immortal man. So this is an immortal man who's like searching for meaning in life and finding that the longer you live, maybe even the harder that is to find. And he goes on a quest. He's from Hyperborea, the ancient lost civilization, and he goes on a quest to find the gods of Olympus and ask them, why am I immortal? Why are you doing this to me? And maybe find a way out of it. And so you encounter many different characters and their ideas on death, and it's an interesting story in that regard philosophically. Like here, he's talking to his lover at the time, who turns out to be Adrastea, and she says, "Can you imagine nothingness, the absence of everything, alive one moment, and then what an instant later, nothing? You no longer exist, yet you don't even know it. You no longer know that you're alive, that you loved or suffered. You lose everything, you become nothing." That sounds terrifying. I was reading that and I was thinking, I don't know, that sounds like a nice big long nap to me. I don't know. I don't have this fear of being dead. I have a fear of like the process of dying, of course, and if it will be painful or not. But I personally don't get this fear of no longer existing. Like I had a esophageal expansion surgery earlier in the year, and man, I when I woke up from that anesthetic they put me under, I was like, oh my god, that was amazing. Like, put me back. So, I don't know. That sounds good to me, but I get that most people are scared of it, and that's the theme throughout the book is people are scared of dying and seeking immortality. But then this man that's immortal, this immortal king here that's given up his kingdom to go on the quest to Olympus, he wants to know, like, how do I get off the carousel, I think. And that's interesting to me because I'm not suicidal or anything, but, like a nice long nap. And I mean, I've had a lot of good things happen in life, but it's a lot of work too. And the relief from that, I don't get why people don't view death as kind of a reward at the end of it. I think me and Tori talk about this a lot, obviously, with her interest in life care. But I think our societies maybe got it twisted, and some other societies have better narratives surrounding death. So I mentioned Mathieu Bablet's colors. They're really interesting, and often, like this page here, really quite beautiful. In this book, There's a lot of more monochromatic images, like this one here, where it's, I don't know, with all the texture and the same color with just changes in value, it's harder for me to interpret than ones like this that have the cool versus warm things going on in them. So I would have liked to see more of that warm versus cool balance in the color, because a lot of this just gets kind of too overwhelming for me to look at. This kind of stuff's nicer, but also the cool and the warm often bleed into each other, and so there's not a very distinct sense of foreground and background, or like separation between characters. And that's something that in other works I've seen is there as well, but I don't remember it being as bothersome to me. I remember thinking it was a really interesting, like I always remember liking Bablet's colors, but in this book there's just kind of where they bleed together a little bit too much for my liking. On pages like this, I really like the explosion of the bright colors, and I can sort those images out a little bit better. But just really cool, fantastical, imaginative imagery all throughout. Here's another really interesting quote on this idea of like life and death and meaning. You seek immortality, but what are we really talking about? The fear of not being able to realize your potential in a single lifetime, so you wish to make it last longer than normal? The real problem is finding out what makes your life, desires, and aspirations meaningful, and believe me, immortality won't bring those answers. And I like that quite a bit, because that is the idea behind immortality. Is like, what are you doing? What are you going to be doing for all of that lifetime? Like, if you can't generate meaning in the 80 years, 90 years, 70 years that you've got, do you really think going 3,000 years is going to make it any better? Or that it's just going to be the same struggle for a more extended period of time? And I think that's the right answer to that question of immortality. It's not that you want to live forever, it's that you want to make the life that you have meaningful. And then of course it's like, well, how do you do that? In this book, I think it just comes back down, the answer comes back down to love again, which is fine, but I don't buy any answer like that as the reason why life is worth living. It's a thing that, like, okay, once you're here, that's the thing that's going to make it worth it. That's the thing that's going to make worthwhile having a project, having love, having responsibility. But I don't think in the sense that he uses it in the book that it's like a justification for life itself. Like if you were chosen to be ripped out of the ether and they'd say, oh, you could come fall in love. Like, I don't know that that would be a big enough argument. It's once you're here, these are the things you do to make your time here worthwhile. Here's a good example of where he does warm versus cool coloring, and man, a panel like that really pops. I wish there was more like that throughout the panel. Here's another good bit of dialogue about life. Maybe you should ask not about the why of life, but rather about the how. And that's something that I've been trying to focus on a lot in my life. Is you can ask, why am I here, or why are we here, or what is all that, but really, like, you're here day to day living it. And so the more important question goes back to like the original Greek philosophers and their concern with ethics, is like how to live a good life. And that question got blown up into why are we alive at all at some point. And I like this return, and it makes sense because this book is packed full of Greek gods and things like that. So that seems very, very key to me that he chose to go backwards. Other pieces of his work are more futuristic, forward. Usually that's what I'm familiar with, sci-fi. So it's interesting to see that on this one that comes back down to that Greek answer, in my opinion, that he chose to go back and do a Greek fantasy. I think that's really smart. And as much as I like the art, I think with Bablet, it's always the writing that sells it in the end. The art's really cool and interesting, but there's also like all these weird stylistic things and the color things that, depending on the panel, I like or I don't like. But it's always sold by this really, really great writing. So yeah, I definitely recommend this book. It's a really pretty book to look at. It's an interesting read, and like I said, when it's coming from Magnetic Press, you know that you're going to get like the best quality reproduction. They have just amazing color prints and really well made books. One of the best ways that you can support what we're doing here on the channel is to support the books that Sean's putting out through Living the Line. The first book that he put out is The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. It's a collaboration between Dave Sim and myself. The book was recently nominated for an Eisner Award in the Best Reality-Based category. It's a deep dive into the artwork and methods of Alex Raymond and the mystery surrounding his death in a car crash. So if you haven't grabbed that already, please do. There's also Yokoyama Yuichi's Plaza, which is a totally intense manga by an artist who has somehow figured out how to distill manga down to its purest essence. This book was successfully funded on Kickstarter, but if you missed the Kickstarter, you can order it through any comic store, any bookstore, Amazon, any place that you would normally get your graphic novels from. The Abolition of Man is a 5-issue mini-series done by myself and Sean in collaboration with the Midjourney AI. What you're seeing here is the cover to issue 1 and the first couple pages of issue 1. This first issue, we fed it an essay by C.S. Lewis, and this is just the imagery that the computer spat back at us. Issues 2 and 3 are a narrative, starting with the story that I wrote when I was 21, and then Sean's going to write issue 3, picking up where I left off. In this one, I'm kind of trying to force the AI to give me the images I want, and then doing some tweaking in Photoshop to get these kind of colored looks on it. For issue 4, we're turning the task of writing over to the AI as well. So the AI has written the script, and then we've just put that into the Midjourney AI, and it's turned out art. The script and the art is some of the absolutely most horrific stuff I've ever seen. We're a bit scared to even publish this issue. And I don't have any art to show for it yet, but Sean and I have decided to do a 5th issue of Abolition as well, because we have someone who we're really excited to have on board, providing an essay for that 5th issue that we'll illustrate, and we'll announce more about that soon. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that